We go to war fever with the former Distinguished Director of National Intelligence in the Trump administration, now an America First Policy Institute security advisor. We welcome back John Rutledge. John, thank you for this. It's very timely. I hope you know more than I know. I'm just reporting. I don't get it at all. Something's crashing down today. What do you think is happening, John Rutledge? What can you tell John Ratcliffe? What can you tell us?
Well, Larry, these reports, as you indicated, are coming in fast and furious. I think the first thing I would say to folks, from an intelligence standpoint, what we don't know is whether all of this is good, honest intelligence. In other words, it is possible that some of what's happening is intelligence that the Russians wanted Western intelligence to pick up through human intelligence or signals intelligence about activity to try and soften, the Western countries in terms of concessions they might be willing to make in an effort at brinksmanship. We just don't know whether all of this is being assessed with, low or moderate or high confidence. But I suspect that it's probably good, honest intelligence because, many of us have been saying for a long time that we thought that the benefits to Vladimir Putin taking this action would outweigh the costs or the pain that our Western European partners and the United States would be willing to impose upon him. And so, we will see, how this plays out. But Larry, I go back to the very first interview I did with you many, many months ago. And the first question you asked me about this Russian buildup of troops and the possibility of a Russian invasion into Ukraine, and you kept saying, why would they say if Russia invades, why wouldn't we start to sanction them now? And I think that really underscores what many of us thought, that this was a bad strategy to diplomatically say we're gonna line up costs that we think will deter Vladimir Putin because they'll be so great that it will deter him from taking an invasion. And obviously, the intelligence reports that are coming in today indicate that it simply hasn't worked.
That's still my view, John. I mean, I just, I'm not an expert. I did sat in all the National Security Council meetings for my 3 years in term, but I don't know why we didn't immediately. I mean, okay, so you might have withheld the banking system sanction, but you sure could have reimposed the Nord Stream 2 sanction. Germany notwithstanding, who cares about Germany? They're a completely unreliable ally. They're really a socialist country. I don't really think they're part of the backbone of NATO, for heaven's sakes. But now, John Rutledge, why am I calling you John? John Ratcliffe, I beg your pardon. John, now it is reported, Jake Sullivan reports, that Biden is going to call Putin, presumably to discuss the intelligence. Whether that intelligence is as I've reported, I don't know. I'm just reporting what I can report. But I'm saying, okay, another Biden-Putin phone call. For what, John? For what? Is he going to now say, okay, we hear this reports, and as of an hour certain, if you do this, we're going to do that? Or is he going to stay with this, if you do, if you do, if you do? You know what I mean? Is he going to be strong or is he going to be weak? Because now they're stirring up war fever. The whole country's looking at this. Right.
Well, I hope that phone call does have the intended effect, but you're right. Is the call, well, now we're really, really serious about the things that we're going to do based on the things that we've seen. I mean, I think that this is, too little too late. And I don't think Vladimir Putin is going to change course based on a phone call with Joe Biden, who is someone he very clearly does not respect or fear as a world leader, just based on the activity that has happened this year. And the actions that he has taken. So, obviously we want the good guys to win and we want the bad guys to be dissuaded and deterred, and Vladimir Putin very much is the bad guy. I just don't have confidence that Joe Biden is the one to bring about a change of course. In fact, I think he has precipitated this change of course by, again, more foreign policy, disastrous strategic decisions that have put us in a worse place, first in Afghanistan, now with respect to Russia and Ukraine, with regard to China, with regard to Iran. There's a reason that people have been saying Joe Biden's been wrong on every foreign policy decision for close to 50 years now. It's because it's true, and now, unfortunately, we're living through it.
I don't know what Biden would do about it if he did invade. I mean, we don't have the support of NATO. That's the thing. It's interesting to me, John Ratcliffe, it's very interesting to me. Biden has had numerous phone calls with Putin, all right, to no avail. Emmanuel Macron spent reportedly 5 hours alone with Putin, I believe earlier this week. I think the German chancellor went up there to Moscow, I'm not sure. But you have this other meeting, the so-called Normandy framework meeting with Russia and Ukraine, and I guess it's reported France and Germany. I don't know if there are any other NATO members. 9 hours, John Ratcliffe, and nothing came of it. In fact, if you believe the reports, and I don't know who to believe, but if you believe what you believe, then basically Lavrov walked out, and they don't want any more meetings, and they don't want no more diplomacy. That's why Jack Keane reported on Martha McCallum's show on Fox News that the period of diplomacy is over. Do you read it that way? Is the period of diplomacy over, and they're just going to launch missiles into Ukraine? That's a hell of a thing. It's a hell of a jump all of a sudden in a 24-hour period.
I do agree with Jack that the diplomacy is over. I don't know that diplomacy in this instance was ever going to work. As we've talked about, the things that would have worked would have been immediate, painful sanctions and an aggressive posture instead of this sort of diplomatic, very handsy, slow play. With a guy in Vladimir Putin who was intent on. As we've talked about, the importance of bringing Ukraine back within the sphere of Russian influence and how that has always been important to him and how he has the opportunity now that he hadn't for the last 4 years and why, the last time Joe Biden was in the White House was the last time he moved on Ukraine in Crimea. And now, after 4 years of strong leadership that isn't in the White House leading, the world's superpower, the United States of America, he's back at it again. That's not a coincidence, Larry. So, and to your point about Macron and the idea that, France would be leading the way in terms of these negotiations instead of the United States really tells you how far we've fallen with respect to, our position as the world superpower and the respect that should command in situations like this when democracies are threatened around the world.
Yeah, we gave up our Keystone Pipeline, we gave up Anwar, we gave up oil production, and we gave it to Putin. We weakened and disempowered America, and we re-empowered Putin. Worst darn thing I've ever... No, the Afghanistan catastrophe was the worst single thing. But this oil thing, Rick Perry was on last evening. This was the worst. The oil card, the oil and gas card, we have so bungled this, it's beyond belief. Beyond belief.
Well, Larry, don't get too far over your skis and declare one thing is the worst. I thought Afghanistan, losing to the Taliban would in a disgraceful, humiliating retreat would be the worst thing. We don't know how this is going to play out. What we do know is that Vladimir Putin's on the cusp of the best political year of his life in terms of getting Nord Stream 2 and now perhaps bringing Ukraine back into the sphere of Russian influence. But, don't leave out Iran and what's happening there. I mean, in terms of, if Iran becomes a nuclear power because of the actions taken, by the Biden administration in literally, surrendering in negotiations to make any deal with Iran, you're going to have a lot of things you're going to have to choose about what's the worst thing that happened from a foreign policy standpoint in the Biden administration. It's going to be tough to narrow it down into really what is the worst.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right. Every time you think it can't get worse, it gets worse. So just give me a little more, would you? We have removed some of the economic sanctions on Iran. I cannot imagine doing that. I don't know if we've given them cash. Some people say they've already received additional cash. I can't confirm that. What is it, John Ratcliffe, that they think Iran's going to do differently other than lie and cheat and avoid nuclear inspections? They're getting close to a nuclear weapon. They continue to finance all manner of terrorism, murderous terrorism in the Middle East. Israel is completely opposed to this new Iran. I mean, these guys, you know, it's like a Texas two-step. It's all hat and no cattle. There's no substance to anything they do. They don't think about, what's Iran going to do? They're going to say, yeah, no problem, come on in. I'm going to show you every missile silo we have. I doubt it.
Well, you know, Larry, it's easy for you and I to criticize this approach, but the most critical people of this are Joe Biden's own negotiators. Part of his negotiating team walked away because he was being soft and weak, and his lead negotiator was not just negotiating with terrorists, but writing them a blank check. I mean, you know, lifting sanctions on the, you know, central bank, the Iranian National Oil Company, lifting, you know, terrorist restrictions on the IRGC, and billions and billions of dollars, all, you know, chasing this really bad actor, as you said, that is, you know, always cheated and is going to. And that's why I get to, I fear that, you know, the Joe Biden legacy is going to be, you know, we went from a president in President Trump who promised that Iran would never get a nuclear weapon to just a short time later, Iran becoming a nuclear power. And, you know, again, when you line that up against as bad as Afghanistan is and as bad as things are shaping up in Europe with Ukraine, that may be the worst of all at the end of the day. Is
John Kerry the guy really driving this just like he did years ago? Is he the guy?
Well, what I can tell you is, you know, probably who's not driving this is Joe Biden. He doesn't seem to be in charge of, you know, many of the foreign policy decisions. He gave an interview with Lester Holt last night about Afghanistan and said, nobody told me about this. So, you know, it's hard to know.
Hang on, John. I want to play a clip. We have the clip. That's a very important point. I nearly forgot it. Please, to the producers, play that quick sound with Lester Holt and President Biden.
I have to draw your attention to that Army report, an investigative report that's come out about the lead up to the withdrawal from Afghanistan. It interviewed many military officials and officers who said the administration ignored the handwriting on the wall.
No, that's not what I was told.
I just want to clarify, are you rejecting the conclusions or the accounts that are in this Army report?
Yes, I am.
So they're not true?
I'm rejecting them.
Wow. So let me get this right.
So
I'm sorry. You go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, here's a president. I mean, this is, you know, you and I have been at that senior level. This is big stuff. The president is saying his military is lying.
That interview was hard to watch for a whole bunch of reasons. And what you heard him say was, no, nobody told me that. But what we do know is that his national security team was told, Secretary Blinken, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, they were told. You know, the prosecutor in me, Larry, you know, would tell you that, you know, based on this, you know, you'd have to bring 13 counts of negligent homicide based on the testimony, the sworn testimony of folks at the Pentagon that said not only was Joe Biden ignoring the Biden administration, you know, ignoring the intelligence on the ground about the Taliban advance, but that they were ignoring pleas for an evacuation plan, and that national security officials were saying, no, that'll look like we failed. And as a result of that, you know, 13 brave American troops were killed as a result of that. I mean, it's just, again, it sounds like a broken record because it keeps happening everywhere. But Joe Biden is not in touch with what his own national security team or his own military leaders are supposedly telling him or not telling him. And it doesn't inspire confidence that the leader of the free world, you know, is getting the intelligence or is retaining the intelligence if, in fact, they are telling him this.
He's saying
so there's a real problem.
Right. He's saying the military and you spooks, you know you're my favorite spook. He's saying all the intel people and the military people didn't tell him. And they say we did tell him. Now, either, you know, you look at that, John, okay, either they get fired or he's got some serious issues to deal with. Somebody, I mean, heads have going to have to roll someplace. Ultimately, my view is Biden's own head is going to roll because this is the worst presidency we've ever seen. But right in here, he's done it again. Remember, he denied. Milley testified. All these guys testified. We told you so. We didn't want to do it, but he insisted on doing it. That is the immediate evacuation, no advance planning. They didn't want to get out of Bagram. He said, go ahead, give them up Bagram, blah, blah, blah. You just can't operate like this. And now the national security, I don't even know if he's meeting with the National Security Council. He's not going to be in the Situation Room. He'll be in Camp David. You can do it up there. There is a skiff up there, as you well know. But I mean, I don't see that on the schedule. I tell you, it's just, you know, it's a Texas two-step. It's all hat and no cattle. Putin, his own Defense Department, the intelligence agencies. John Ratcliffe, I'm losing my mind. I'm not kidding. I can't get my brain around this thing.